video, I'm just going to look a little bit at how to handle the reading for your dissertation or individual project, because that's something that some students have been asking about recently, and I think it's an area that particularly at the start of a piece of research can cause quite a lot of stress and feel a bit overwhelming. So over the course of your dissertation or research project, you're going to be probably doing quite a lot of reading for different purposes. So to know how to read and how to go about it, you need to think which of these purposes you're trying to achieve at any particular time. So I've just noted some of them down here. A really key one is reading to help you understand the field. You're going to probably need to explain as part of your background what the research context is and the key principles, key ideas behind that. As you get started reading about your research project, sometimes the papers are so specialised it can feel really hard to understand them. So at that stage you need to take a step back and try and piece together what's the broader picture that this research fits in, that these ideas fit in, and really help yourself to understand the field. What are the key concepts that people are talking about? What are the principles? What are the ideas lying behind that? That will actually really help you when you come to write your background sections and you need to explain a lot of this stuff to your reader. As well as just understanding those concepts to help you get going, you often, when we're marking the background, your supervisor will be looking for, do you show an understanding of your field, and really crucially, do you know what gaps and limitations there are in existing work? So it's worth checking whatever the current marking criteria are for your course, but that is usually in some form there for the dissertation. This idea of, do you understand the current research context and can you identify gaps and limitations? This is really crucial because if there are no gaps and limitations, there is no need for your research. So it's essential that you work this out. Working back from that, how can you know if there's a gap if you don't show good understanding and don't have good understanding of the context and of what is already known? So that is one area which will probably take quite a lot of time getting your head around that. Also, the reading help you to identify a suitable method for your research. We often think of the reading phase linked to the background, the introduction, the literature review in particular. However, it's also important in your results section when you're analysing what you have done and the findings and the outcomes that you've got, comparing those to what other people have found. Is it similar? Is it different? Why might that be? Help it, again, going back to that wider research community of which you are being part, to see how do you fit into that, and help us to understand beyond what we can merely see on the page what this might mean. It can be really useful to use the sources that you're reading to actually develop your own vocabulary and your own communication skills. There isn't a book, when you're getting into research, there isn't a book that's going to give you all of the words that you need to know, all the words that would be good for describing your kind of research. So as you read, it's useful to be building those things up. Also looking at how effective science and engineering communicators, how they communicate their ideas. So by doing that, reading other people's papers, what do you like, what do you not like? If you find somebody's particularly easy to read, what have they done that makes that easy? If you're reading somebody's paper that you're finding really hard, how much is it the ideas and how much is it the way they've written about it that you don't like as much? So building up your kind of your skills and your identity, what you like as STEM communication skills. It might be that reading is actually a core part of your research, that you're kind of surveying and drawing together as a core part of your research, and it could obviously be that you're looking through for specific information. I'm actually going to particularly focus on that bit for getting going, the literature review, working out those key concepts, because I think this is the phase where most people feel a bit overwhelmed, and it can be quite daunting because it's really early on in your research. So as I said before, you need to try to understand the concepts. If you're just reading the highly specialised papers, at the beginning you might struggle to understand them, so you need to be doing the other reading to help you understand the ideas in those papers. As you read both background reading and specialist research papers, you're wanting to identify the key concepts. So these ideas, and also bringing it up to what is the most recent research. But we need to understand this in the bigger context. A mistake that can be made in the literature review is when people describe, study 1 showed, study 2 showed, study 3 showed, study 4 showed, and just describe each paper. This is going to struggle when somebody's looking to mark for how you understand that research context and looking for deeper understanding, because you're probably, if you follow that kind of structure, going to be largely describing. To really show the deeper analysis, you need to really spend time mapping the ideas and grouping them together. What are the key concepts? How do they fit together? Making connections between what you read. Okay, so paper 1 might have shown something. Is that established knowledge? Do lots of people agree with that? Do some people disagree with that? Is that a new idea? Is that an idea that was made 5 years ago and has now been dropped? Give us an idea of how it fits within the picture. We need to know what is kind of established core knowledge and what are newer ideas. With the literature review, communication is really key. So you'll be giving your reader what you would love somebody to give you at this point, which is kind of a map to understand your research. But how you communicate that is essential, and it is about grouping these ideas, the key concepts, and moving us down towards how that fits to the most recent research and the most relevant research to your project. It's also about establishing a hierarchy. So maybe you've got things grouped around one idea. What's the overall idea that holds those things together? And then what are the sub-points leading off? So, maybe you've got 2.1. Well, what would 2.1.1 be? 2.1.2? What is separate enough to warrant being 2.2? So you really need to not only group and make connections between ideas, have a hierarchy, an idea of hierarchy within those ideas as well. I'd really recommend from the start of your literature review having a system in place for keeping your notes, whether you're writing those down online, on paper, highlighting, whatever you're doing, and keeping your reference details. Be worth attending training or speaking to people at the library about a system for doing this. There is nothing worse, well, there is things worse, but it's really frustrating to get further on and you're just finalising your research project and you've realised that you've done reading but you haven't got the full reference details, and then you need to go back and try and find them at a later date. It's much easier, if not very exciting, to from the start have a system, and it will really pay off. It's the kind of thing we all make the mistake once where we don't keep these details and really regret it. So I'm advising you now to try and keep those details. It will save you a lot of frustration in the future. A couple of final little thoughts then, particularly with technical writing, students can find it hard to paraphrase, so they put things into direct quotations. Remember, the direct quotations are there if there's something particularly special about the way it's written. We don't quote just because there was a lot of technical language and it was really hard to paraphrase. So if you're struggling with that, which many people do, and it's understandable, I would really recommend seeking out help early on and just tackling it straight on, practicing it, getting feedback on some of those paraphrases. On the Elsewhere in this channel we have a video about paraphrasing, or contact people for advice on practicing and developing that skill, because you don't want to unnecessarily use direct quotations. Also, as you are building up your ideas, I would spend 5 minutes at the end of each paper identifying like what is nice language, what is the specialist kind of language that people are using to be able to talk with precision about your field. What is the language they use when discussing the ideas and the results in the discussion section? How do they get across the appropriate degree of certainty? Really spending about 5 minutes at the end of reading different articles to think about the way they use language will help you as you try to use the language to talk about your field. So it's just a few ideas to help you to get going on reading for your dissertation.